Barack Obama's address at the 2024 Democratic National Convention prominently emphasized the vital importance of unity within the Democratic Party, and this theme was woven intricately throughout his speech. From the very beginning, Obama positioned unity not simply as a political strategy, but as a moral and practical necessity for the survival and progress of democratic governance in the United States. He spoke to a party that, like many political organizations, had experienced internal debates, ideological divergences, and generational differences. By acknowledging these differences openly, he validated the perspectives of diverse party members while simultaneously framing unity as a call to action that transcends individual priorities. The essence of his message was that the Democratic Party, despite its diversity, must stand together to advance shared values and achieve common goals, particularly in a political climate marked by polarization and complex challenges. Obama's articulation of unity went beyond the surface level of party solidarity. He delved into the philosophical and historical foundations of the Democratic Party, reminding his audience that its core values equality, social justice, opportunity, and the defense of democratic principles have always required collaboration and compromise. He invoked historical examples, drawing attention to periods when Americans, particularly those fighting for civil rights and social reforms, had achieved remarkable progress precisely because they set aside internal divisions to work collectively. These narratives served a dual purpose. They honored the sacrifices of past leaders and activists while providing a roadmap for contemporary party members. By connecting the current political moment to historical struggles, Obama underscored that unity is not a passive state of agreement, but an active, ongoing process of negotiation, understanding, and shared commitment to enduring principles. Throughout his address, Obama skillfully employed storytelling as a means to illustrate the tangible impact of unity. He recounted anecdotes of ordinary Americans from different walks of life, teachers, healthcare workers, activists, and young voters, who, despite varying perspectives and challenges, were able to accomplish meaningful change by working together. These stories were not merely rhetorical flourishes. They were strategic devices aimed at humanizing political engagement and making the abstract concept of unity tangible and relatable. By highlighting how collective action leads to real-world outcomes, he invited party members to see unity not as a compromise of ideals, but as a tool for amplifying their impact. His use of relatable narratives made the audience feel personally invested in the larger mission, reinforcing the idea that each individual's contribution matters in the broader context of national progress. Another critical dimension of Obama's discussion on unity was his acknowledgement of internal party debates. Rather than ignoring disagreements or presenting an unrealistic picture of seamless cohesion, he addressed ideological and strategic differences with nuance and respect. He framed these differences as opportunities for dialogue and growth, suggesting that a mature, resilient political organization can accommodate diverse viewpoints while remaining committed to shared principles. By presenting unity as a dynamic process rather than a static condition, Obama encouraged members to engage constructively with dissenting opinions, reinforcing the notion that internal debate, when channeled productively, strengthens the party's overall ability to respond to challenges. In addition, Obama tied the theme of unity to broader national imperatives. He emphasized that the Democratic Party does not exist in a vacuum. Its ability to enact policies that protect rights, expand opportunities, and respond to crises is directly influenced by its cohesion. He illustrated this point by referencing contemporary issues such as healthcare access, climate change, and economic inequality, highlighting that fragmented efforts or disunity could hinder progress and allow adversaries to exploit divisions. In doing so, he framed unity not merely as a party concern, but as a civic responsibility with tangible consequences for the country as a whole. This linkage between internal party cohesion and national well-being served to elevate the stakes of unity, making it a central moral and practical imperative for all members. Furthermore, Obama's delivery of this message was strategically crafted to inspire and energize. His tone balanced realism with optimism, acknowledging challenges while instilling a sense of possibility. The rhythm and cadence of his speech, coupled with carefully chosen language, emphasized collaboration, shared purpose, and collective strength. He frequently used inclusive language, phrases like "we must," "together," and "our shared mission," to reinforce the notion that unity is an active endeavor requiring commitment from every member. This rhetorical strategy helped transform a conceptual argument about unity into an emotionally compelling call to action, motivating the audience to internalize the message and translate it into engagement, advocacy, and cooperation. Finally, Obama's emphasis on unity extended beyond immediate political considerations to touch on broader democratic ideals. He framed unity as a defense against polarization, extremism, and cynicism, suggesting that a united party is better equipped to uphold democratic norms, advance social justice, and protect the rights and freedoms of all citizens. By linking unity to moral and civic values, he elevated the discussion from tactical politics to a principled vision of leadership. His argument implied that internal cohesion is not merely a strategic necessity, but a reflection of the party's commitment to its foundational principles, serving as both a shield and a guide for effective governance. In conclusion, Obama's call for unity at the 2024 Democratic National Convention was a masterful blend of historical reflection, personal storytelling, pragmatic insight, and moral exhortation. He presented unity as an essential tool for achieving political goals, advancing social justice, and strengthening democracy itself. By validating internal differences while emphasizing shared values, connecting personal narratives to collective action, and linking party cohesion to national interests, he delivered a powerful message that resonated deeply with the audience. The takeaway was clear: unity within the Democratic Party is not optional or superficial. It is a vital, active commitment necessary for meaningful progress, effective governance, and the realization of the democratic ideals that define the nation. Barack Obama's 2024 Democratic National Convention speech also stood out for its pointed critique of opposing policies and leadership, a theme that he addressed with both precision and gravitas. Throughout his remarks, Obama framed this critique not as a partisan attack for its own sake, but as a thoughtful examination of policy decisions and leadership approaches that he argued were inconsistent with the principles of democratic governance, social equity, and national progress. From the outset, he made it clear that accountability is an essential component of responsible citizenship and effective leadership, emphasizing that voters must consider not only the rhetoric of leaders, but also the tangible impacts of their policies on ordinary Americans. In doing so, he underscored the notion that criticism, when grounded in evidence and ethical reasoning, is an act of civic duty rather than mere political posturing. One of the most striking aspects of Obama's critique was his ability to weave specific policy examples into a broader narrative about values, fairness, and justice. He highlighted instances where he believed leadership had failed to address pressing issues such as healthcare access, economic inequality, climate change, and civil rights protections. Rather than relying solely on abstract arguments or generalized accusations, he detailed the real-world consequences of these policies on individuals and communities, By framing his critique in this way, he made the discussion concrete, relatable, and morally compelling. Voters were reminded that political decisions are not theoretical. They have direct, measurable effects on the quality of life, opportunities, and security of millions of people across the country. A key dimension of Obama's critique involved examining leadership styles and decision-making approaches. He argued that effective leadership requires transparency, empathy, and a commitment to inclusive decision-making. In contrast, he suggested that some recent political leaders had exhibited tendencies toward unilateral action, disregard for expert advice, or prioritization of narrow interests over the common good. Through careful and measured language, Obama highlighted the risks associated with such approaches, including the erosion of public trust, the marginalization of vulnerable populations, and the potential weakening of democratic institutions. By doing so, he framed leadership not merely as a position of authority, but as a moral and civic responsibility with profound consequences for the nation's social, economic, and political health. In addition to critiquing specific policies and leadership styles, Obama's remarks emphasized the broader implications of neglecting justice, equity, and evidence-based governance. He argued that policies that fail to consider the needs of all Americans, particularly historically marginalized groups, undermine the very fabric of democracy. By linking individual policy choices to systemic consequences, he highlighted the interconnected nature of governance and social well-being. This approach reinforced the idea that leadership must be assessed not only by intention but by tangible outcomes, and that the electorate has a responsibility to evaluate both the ethical and practical dimensions of decision-making. In this way, Obama elevated the conversation beyond partisan critique to a principled discussion about the values and competencies that define responsible governance. Another element that made Obama's critique particularly compelling was his use of storytelling and real-life examples. He recounted situations in which policy failures directly affected families, workers, and communities, emphasizing how these decisions created unnecessary hardship or exacerbated existing inequalities. By personalizing abstract policy discussions, he made the stakes immediately understandable and emotionally resonant. This storytelling approach also served to humanize political debates, reminding audiences that behind every legislative decision or executive order are people whose lives are shaped by those choices. In this context, critique becomes not an exercise in negativity, but a tool for advocacy, reform, and moral accountability. Obama also positioned his critique as forward-looking, combining accountability with a vision for solutions. He underscored that while identifying failures and holding leaders responsible is necessary, it is equally important to articulate alternative approaches grounded in fairness, equity, and effectiveness. He highlighted initiatives and policy ideas that the Democratic Party could pursue to address pressing challenges, emphasizing that critique without constructive action is incomplete. By balancing criticism with proposals for improvement, he avoided the trap of negativity or polarization, and instead framed his analysis as part of a broader commitment to progress and responsible governance. The tone and delivery of Obama's critique further amplified its impact. His measured yet authoritative cadence, coupled with carefully chosen language, conveyed seriousness and credibility. Unlike speeches that rely on hyperbole or personal attacks, Obama's approach combined analytical rigor with moral clarity. This allowed him to engage both the party base and broader audiences, demonstrating that principled critique can be persuasive without descending into divisive rhetoric. He showed that it is possible to challenge opponents robustly while maintaining respect for democratic norms, factual accuracy, and ethical responsibility. Finally, the broader takeaway from this portion of his speech was a clear call for voters and party members to remain informed, engaged, and vigilant. Obama underscored that democracy depends on citizens who are willing to assess leadership critically, demand accountability, and advocate for policies that align with core values of justice, equity, and opportunity. He framed critique not as cynicism, but as an essential component of civic engagement, reinforcing the idea that leadership and governance are collective responsibilities shared by elected officials and the electorate alike. Through this lens, his examination of opposing policies and leadership became a moral, practical, and civic imperative, urging Americans to evaluate decisions critically and act intentionally in shaping the country's future. In conclusion, Obama's critique of opposing policies and leadership at the 2024 Democratic National Convention was a masterclass in principled political analysis. It combined specificity, moral reasoning, real-life examples, and forward-looking solutions to create a compelling narrative about accountability, governance, and the responsibilities of both leaders and citizens. By balancing critique with hope and emphasizing the stakes of leadership for real people and the nation as a whole, he delivered a message that was both persuasive and inspirational, highlighting the essential role of informed engagement in a thriving democracy. Barack Obama's 2024 Democratic National Convention speech placed significant emphasis on the pressing economic and social challenges facing Americans today, highlighting both the scale of these issues and the moral imperative to address them through thoughtful policy and collective action. Central to this portion of his speech was the understanding that economic opportunity, social justice, and the well-being of citizens are deeply interconnected, and that a nation cannot thrive when significant portions of its population are left behind. By addressing these challenges in a nuanced and detailed manner, Obama demonstrated both empathy for those affected and a commitment to principled, evidence-based solutions, framing these issues as urgent matters for political leaders and citizens alike. Obama began by drawing attention to the widening gaps in economic opportunity, emphasizing that many Americans continue to struggle despite the country's overall wealth and technological advancement. He highlighted the experiences of families who work tirelessly yet remain burdened by stagnant wages, insufficient health care, and limited access to affordable education. By connecting these structural problems to real human experiences, he created a narrative that was both relatable and morally compelling. He underscored that economic inequality is not just a matter of numbers or statistics. It has profound social and psychological consequences, affecting people's ability to plan for the future, invest in their communities, and participate fully in civic life. His framing emphasized that addressing economic disparities is not merely a policy preference, but a moral and civic obligation. A significant part of Obama's discussion centered on healthcare, a perennial concern for millions of Americans. He highlighted the challenges faced by individuals and families who cannot afford basic medical care, pointing out how these barriers exacerbate existing inequalities and place undue strain on the broader social fabric. He contrasted these difficulties with the potential benefits of policies aimed at expanding access, reducing costs, and investing in preventive care. By illustrating the human stakes of healthcare policy decisions, Obama emphasized that social and economic policies are inseparable from human dignity and opportunity. The discussion served to remind the audience that government and leadership exist to ensure that all citizens have the ability to lead healthy, productive lives. Education was another cornerstone of Obama's exploration of social and economic challenges. He argued that access to quality education is foundational to upward mobility and a thriving economy. By highlighting disparities in educational resources, opportunities, and outcomes, particularly in historically marginalized communities, he made a compelling case that the nation cannot achieve its full potential if talent and ambition are stifled by systemic inequities. Obama spoke about the ripple effects of educational inequality, explaining that inadequate schooling limits career prospects, reduces earning potential, and perpetuates cycles of disadvantage. His argument extended beyond moral considerations to pragmatic ones, emphasizing that a well-educated population is essential for innovation, competitiveness, and social cohesion. By linking education to broader economic and social outcomes, he painted a comprehensive picture of why policy decisions in this area are critical for national success. Obama also highlighted the challenges faced by the workforce in the modern economy. He addressed issues such as wage stagnation, job insecurity, and the evolving demands of a globalized labor market. He pointed out that many workers, despite long hours and significant effort, find themselves unable to achieve financial stability or plan for retirement. This focus on labor realities reinforced his broader narrative about inequality and the need for policies that ensure fair compensation, workplace protections, and opportunities for advancement. By connecting economic policy to the lived experiences of everyday Americans, he made the challenges concrete and actionable, creating a sense of urgency for systemic solutions. Social issues were intertwined throughout his discussion of economic challenges. Obama emphasized that economic insecurity is often compounded by discrimination, social marginalization, and unequal access to resources. He spoke about the interconnectedness of economic and social justice, highlighting how policies that promote equity, inclusion, and opportunity strengthen the nation as a whole. This approach reinforced his broader message that addressing systemic challenges requires holistic thinking. Solutions cannot be limited to isolated policy areas, but must consider the broader social and economic ecosystem. By doing so, he painted a vision of governance that is both morally grounded and practically effective. Throughout this segment of his speech, Obama employed storytelling and examples to humanize the challenges he described. He recounted the experiences of families, workers, and young people navigating economic hardship and social inequities, using these stories to illustrate the broader systemic problems in a relatable way. These narratives served to remind the audience that policy debates are not abstract. They have real consequences for real people. By doing so, he elevated the discussion from statistics to lived experience, making it emotionally resonant and morally urgent. Finally, Obama tied his discussion of economic and social challenges to the responsibilities of leadership and civic engagement. He argued that these problems are not insurmountable, but require vision, commitment, and collective effort. He emphasized the importance of electing leaders who prioritize equity, inclusivity, and evidence-based policy solutions, while also encouraging citizens to engage actively in shaping their communities and holding leaders accountable. By framing economic and social challenges as both a moral obligation and a collective responsibility, he inspired a sense of urgency while offering a path forward rooted in hope, action, and shared purpose. In conclusion, Obama's focus on economic and social challenges at the 2024 Democratic National Convention was a compelling blend of empathy, moral clarity, and practical analysis. By highlighting inequality, healthcare gaps, educational disparities, labor concerns, and the intersection of social and economic issues, he painted a vivid picture of the stakes for everyday Americans. His message emphasized that addressing these challenges is not only necessary for justice and fairness, but also critical for national prosperity and democratic vitality. Through storytelling, data-driven arguments, and an inspiring vision for collective action, Obama effectively communicated that these pressing issues demand attention, leadership, and unified effort from both policymakers and citizens, reinforcing his broader call for active engagement and shared responsibility. One of the most compelling aspects of Barack Obama's speech at the 2024 Democratic National Convention was his passionate call for civic engagement and voter participation, which he presented as both a moral duty and a practical necessity for the health of democracy. From the outset, Obama emphasized that a functioning democracy depends on the active involvement of its citizens, not merely on the structures of government or the actions of elected officials. He framed voting as an essential tool for shaping the nation's future and ensuring that policies reflect the collective will and values of the people. In his address, Obama combined historical perspective, contemporary examples, and a deeply motivational tone to encourage Americans to embrace their responsibility to participate fully in civic life. Obama began by reminding the audience that the right to vote is both hard, won, and fundamental. He reflected on the struggles of previous generations, particularly the civil rights activists who fought tirelessly to secure voting rights for marginalized communities. By drawing this historical parallel, he underscored that democracy is neither automatic nor guaranteed. It requires vigilance, commitment, and action. He highlighted the sacrifices made by those who endured systemic oppression, threats, and violence to ensure that future generations could exercise their voices at the ballot box. This historical context served a dual purpose. It honored past efforts and created a moral imperative for contemporary citizens to engage, emphasizing that taking part in elections is an act of respect for those who came before and a responsibility to those who will follow. A central element of Obama's call for civic engagement was the emphasis on inclusivity. He specifically addressed groups that have historically faced barriers to participation, including young voters, minority communities, and disenfranchised populations. He recognized that these groups often feel marginalized or disconnected from the political process, and he sought to reframe their participation as a powerful tool for change. By highlighting stories of ordinary citizens who have effected significant change through grassroots organizing, local elections, or community activism, Obama demonstrated that individual actions can have profound consequences. His message was clear: every vote, every voice, and every effort to engage civically matters, and collective participation is what gives democracy its strength and legitimacy. In addition to emphasizing the importance of voting, Obama framed civic engagement more broadly as active participation in community and public life. He highlighted the value of being informed, understanding policy implications, attending town halls, joining local organizations, and advocating for causes that resonate with personal values. By expanding the concept of civic engagement beyond casting ballots, he encouraged Americans to see themselves as active participants in the ongoing project of democracy, rather than passive observers. This broader definition empowered citizens to take ownership of local, state, and national issues, reinforcing the idea that sustainable change often begins at the community level and is amplified through coordinated, collective action. Obama also addressed the barriers and challenges that can discourage participation, such as misinformation, voter suppression efforts, and political cynicism. He acknowledged the frustration and skepticism that many Americans feel about the efficacy of their participation, but countered this by emphasizing historical examples in which persistent engagement led to meaningful change. By recognizing these obstacles without diminishing their significance, he demonstrated empathy and credibility, while simultaneously reinforcing the urgency of action. His argument suggested that democracy's strength is measured not by convenience or ease, but by the resilience and commitment of its citizens in the face of challenges. A powerful rhetorical tool Obama employed was the use of personal narratives and relatable examples. He spoke about young activists, community organizers, and ordinary citizens who mobilized to influence policy, protect civil rights, and improve their communities. These examples served to inspire audiences by showing that ordinary people, not just politicians, have the power to create change. By highlighting tangible outcomes from grassroots efforts, Obama reinforced the message that participation is effective and consequential, making the act of civic engagement both motivational and practical. Moreover, Obama tied civic engagement directly to the nation's broader democratic health and future stability. He argued that when citizens disengage or abstain from participation, it allows policies and leadership that may not reflect the public interest to take hold, thereby weakening the foundational principles of democracy. Conversely, when citizens actively participate, they hold leaders accountable, influence policy outcomes, and ensure that governance is more representative, just, and responsive. This linkage between engagement and accountability underscored his larger message. Participation is not merely a right, but a responsibility essential to the functioning of a healthy and equitable society. Finally, throughout this section of his speech, Obama skillfully combined inspiration with practicality. He did not simply tell Americans to vote. He explained how participation could effect real change, using both evidence and emotionally resonant storytelling. His language was inclusive and energizing, employing phrases like "we can," "our collective power," and "together we achieve," to foster a sense of shared responsibility and collective efficacy. By framing civic engagement as both a moral imperative and a tangible means of shaping society, he instilled hope, purpose, and motivation in his audience. In conclusion, Obama's focus on civic engagement and voter participation at the 2024 Democratic National Convention was a deeply strategic and morally resonant part of his speech. He framed engagement as a cornerstone of democracy, linking it to historical struggle, contemporary challenges, and future aspirations. By addressing barriers to participation, highlighting the power of ordinary citizens, and providing a clear vision of why involvement matters, he delivered a message that was simultaneously inspiring, practical, and urgent. His address reminded Americans that democracy thrives not through passive observation, but through active, informed, and sustained participation, reinforcing the critical role of citizens in shaping the country's future and protecting its democratic ideals. One of the most memorable and inspiring aspects of Barack Obama's 2024 Democratic National Convention speech was his emphasis on hope and a forward-looking vision for the nation. Throughout his address, he masterfully combined realism with optimism, acknowledging the serious challenges facing Americans while conveying a sense of possibility, resilience, and collective action. Central to this message was the idea that positive change is achievable not through despair or cynicism, but through perseverance, shared effort, and adherence to democratic principles. By framing hope as both a moral and practical imperative, Obama reinforced the notion that leadership, policy, and civic engagement are most effective when guided by a vision that inspires and motivates people to work toward a better future. Obama began by reflecting on the historical trajectory of the United States, emphasizing that progress has always been the result of concerted effort, collaboration, and belief in the possibility of change. He reminded the audience of moments in history when seemingly insurmountable obstacles were overcome, whether through civil rights movements, labor struggles, or social reforms. By placing contemporary challenges within this historical continuum, He encouraged Americans to see themselves as part of a larger story, one in which individual actions, when aligned with collective purpose, have the power to shape the course of the nation. This historical framing lent weight and legitimacy to his vision of hope, suggesting that optimism is not naive but grounded in evidence and experience. A key aspect of Obama's message was the balance between acknowledging difficulties and presenting solutions. He did not shy away from discussing pressing issues such as economic inequality, political polarization, climate change, and threats to democratic norms. However, he coupled each acknowledgement with examples of resilience, innovation, and grassroots problem solving. By doing so, he avoided the trap of negativity or fear mongering, instead illustrating that challenges, while real, are not insurmountable. His vision of the future was one in which Americans can confront difficulties together, employing intelligence, empathy, and determination to overcome barriers and create meaningful change. Obama also emphasized the moral dimension of hope, suggesting that optimism is a deliberate choice that reflects one's commitment to justice, fairness, and collective well-being. He argued that hope is not passive. It requires action, courage, and perseverance. By framing hope as a form of agency, he encouraged citizens to engage actively in civic life, whether through voting, activism, or community leadership. This approach elevated hope from a simple emotional state to a principle that guides behavior and informs decision-making. It was a reminder that belief in a better future carries with it responsibility to act, to collaborate, and to contribute to the common good. Another striking feature of Obama's forward-looking vision was his emphasis on inclusivity and collective responsibility. He argued that the future of the nation depends on bringing together people from diverse backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences to work towards shared goals. By highlighting stories of communities overcoming adversity through cooperation and mutual support, he demonstrated that progress is most sustainable when it involves broad participation and respects the dignity of all individuals. This inclusive vision reinforced his broader message of unity, connecting hope to practical outcomes and illustrating that optimism is strengthened when it is rooted in collaboration and shared purpose. Obama's rhetoric also skillfully connected hope to leadership and governance. He suggested that visionary leadership must not only identify problems, but also inspire citizens to believe in their ability to effect change. By emphasizing values such as integrity, empathy, and responsibility, he presented leadership as a moral compass guiding collective action. His critique of leadership failures was balanced by this constructive vision, making clear that the nation's trajectory depends not solely on elected officials, but on the engagement and expectations of its citizens. In this sense, hope was intertwined with accountability, demonstrating that optimism is not passive cheerfulness, but an active, vigilant commitment to building a better society. Additionally, Obama emphasized the power of imagination and forward-thinking solutions. He encouraged Americans to envision a country where opportunity is accessible to all, where social and economic inequalities are addressed, and where communities are resilient in the face of challenges. By inviting his audience to imagine such a future, he fostered a sense of possibility and collective ambition. This forward-looking approach was motivational because it suggested that today's actions directly shape tomorrow's reality. It reinforced the idea that every citizen has a role in crafting the future, and that collective vision coupled with deliberate action can transform society in meaningful ways. Obama also highlighted the role of younger generations in sustaining hope and progress. He spoke directly to young Americans, acknowledging their energy, creativity, and commitment to justice. He emphasized that their engagement is crucial for building a future that is more equitable, innovative, and resilient. By empowering younger audiences, he ensured that hope was not abstract or symbolic, but tangible and actionable. His message implied that the future belongs to those willing to take responsibility, act decisively, and collaborate for the common good, reinforcing the practical dimensions of optimism and vision. In conclusion, Obama's emphasis on hope and a forward-looking vision at the 2024 Democratic National Convention was a powerful synthesis of realism, moral clarity, and motivational rhetoric. He demonstrated that optimism is not naive but grounded in history, evidence, and the potential of collective action. By combining acknowledgement of challenges with actionable solutions, promoting inclusivity and civic responsibility, and inspiring imagination and ambition, he created a compelling vision of what the nation can achieve when citizens and leaders work together. His address left audiences with the clear message that hope is both a mindset and a call to action. It requires engagement, perseverance, and a shared commitment to democratic principles and human dignity. Through this vision, Obama reinforced that the future is not predetermined, but is shaped by those who believe in the possibility of positive change and are willing to work tirelessly to realize it.